otherwise also known as eco-toxicology. So just going straight to what we have this morning, and let's see how far we can go. So briefly, we're going to be looking at what toxicity is. Under the toxicity, we'll look at toxicology, the fate and effects of this. We'll look at the brief history of toxicology, those response relationship and like that. So we'll look at everything about toxicity. Then when we're done with the toxicity, we'll now look at the environmental toxicology. So look at what environmental toxicology is, the objective, the importance of toxic tests. So we're going to be looking at all of that. All right, so quickly, let's just go straight to the cause. So what is toxicity? Toxicity is the inherent potential or capacity of a material to cause adverse effects on a living organism. So anything that has the potential or that has the capacity to cause a serious health effect, adverse effect on a living organism, that's referred to as toxicity. So anything that has a potential, it could be in form of a chemical, it could be, and these chemicals can come in form of solid, liquid, or gaseous states. It could be anything at all. All right, so anything that has the potential or the capacity to cause harm to living organisms, that's what toxicity is. Then, of course, toxicology is a study of the effect of chemicals on living things and is the fundamental science of poison. So toxicology basically studies these chemicals that has the potential to cause adverse effects on living organisms. All right. So basically, the science of poison is what toxicology is. All right. Then what's a poison? A poison is considered to be any substance which can cause severe injury or death as a result of a physicochemical interaction with living things. I remember I carried out a research on the effect of crude oil concentration on the tissues of living organisms. And we used These or there are harvested these fish and they will okay, so we'll just continue from where we stopped. Sorry about that, please. So I was trying to explain all right, so we continue from where we stopped. Sorry. So I was trying to explain what poison is. So the poison is considered to be any substance which can cause severe injury or death as a result of a physicochemical interaction with living tissues. So anything that can cause changes within the tissues or organs of any living organisms when ingested, that is called a poison. So I was trying to explain to you a research that we carried out, trying to look at the effect of crude oil and on the tissues of a living organism. We had to use a fish, tilapia fish. We had about 5 different specimens, categorized into A, B, C, D. Then we had a control. So each of them were given different doses of crude oil. They were fed with different doses of crude oil. And after I think about 28 days, we had to harvest them. We killed the tilapia fish, harvested the vital organs and tissues, and then we had to do a test to find out how much damage or effect it had. So we're trying to use that to see the kind of damage that this can also do to living human beings. So anything that has our ability to damage the tissues and the organs of living organism, that is referred to as what poison. All right, so that's what poison. That's what the poison is. So just proceed now. Toxicology now, because that's the major focus of this particular course. What is called toxicology? As I earlier said, the study also describes how and why certain substances cause disruptions in biological systems that result in toxic effects. So toxicology studies these poisons, these toxins that actually cause effects in the systems of living organisms. How do they get in? When they get in, how do they react with the tissues and the organs of the system? And what is the effect at the end of the day? This is what toxicology actually studies. So why toxicology is very, very important? Just like I said, poisons are not only the common poisons that we know, okay, like the DDT, this one's they use in killing rats, the normal, anything at all can be a poison, especially when it's taking overdose. A drug that is supposed to take care of your headache can become a poison when the dose taken is too much for the body and begins to affect. So anything can be a poison. As I said, any substance, it mustn't be just a chemical with high concentration. Any substance that has the ability. So even the food you eat can become a poison to you too. All right. So it is very important to understand these things. That's why toxicology is very, very important, because it helps us to illustrate how these poisons or how these toxins get into the body to affect the tissues and the organs of the living organism. All right, especially when it's taken in a very, very high dose. So that's basically what why toxicology is important. All right, so there are some substances that you need to take in a very low level or a very low dose. There are also some, so depending, so once there's a disruption in that dose response, it becomes a poison, or it becomes dangerous to the body. So toxicology helps us to study the dose they're supposed to take within the body, and how does the body respond to that dose. So look at the normal, the abnormal, and the very, very abnormal. So look at that dose response relationship. So all of this just to tell you why toxicology is very, very, very important. So let's look at the fate and effects of toxicants in the body. What is the fate and effect of toxicants in the body? The fate and effect of toxicants in the body. Now, I have a diagram there that helps us explain the fate and effect of toxicants in the body. First of all, the living organism will have to be exposed to that toxin or to that poison. That means the living organism must find him or herself or itself to the environment where that particular poison is contained. Just like I said, for the fishes that we have to introduce crude oil, different doses of crude oil into the water like that. So that's number one. Exposure is a first process in these toxins entering the body. So once the living organism is exposed to the environment where these toxins are contained, the poisons will now gain entrance to the body. And there are 4 ways in which toxins or poisons or substances enter the body. It's either through ingestion, that is the one you take through the mouth. So as the organism is feeding on grass, maybe like a herbivorous animal is feeding on grass for food, and these grasses contains these toxins or poison. So as they are eating it, they are also taking it into their own body. We've seen situations where even the ugu leaf, all these pumpkin leaves and the rest of them that we use, we have seen some doses of chemicals in a human being's body because of this. Maybe they got it through these vegetables, especially when they are not cooked. Some of them are consumed naturally like that. And once these vegetables or fruits contains this chemical, it finds its way into the body. So that's number one way that these toxins enter the body, through ingestion. Because you can't just see poison and begin to drink poison, no. But from the food that you eat, when the food is contaminated, it gets entrance into the body. That's ingestion. We have inhalation. This one goes through the nose. When you inhale those chemical substances, especially in the gaseous form, all right, it makes way into the body and begins to affect the vital organs and tissues of the body. So inhalation is another way. Then we have injection. Injection, that is piercing. Okay, contaminated metal substances like syringes, razor, sharp object that is exposed, and you mistakenly get caught by it. Now, these poisons or these things can also make their way through you find it on absorption is your skin, and then somehow it diffuses into the body. That's why it's a terrible situation when you go to a site, a construction site, and you see a young man going to a site, well dressed, but the moment he gets to the site, he pulls his shirt, pulls his trouser, wears only boxers, exposes himself like that without covering any part. And then 30 minutes to the work, he's already covered with cement all over his body. And we understand temperature regulation in human being because we must maintain a constant body temperature of 37. When the weather condition becomes very hot, there's a possibility that the body temperature will also rise. Now, the hypothalamus of the brain will have to regulate the body temperature through a process called vasodilation. So the sweat pores opens, and then the individual begins to sweat. Now that sweat, that water that is coming out from your body in form of sweat, brings a cooling effect to the body, thereby bringing it down to the normal 27. Then the reverse also happens when the weather is too cold. It's possible that the temperature of the body might drop less than 37. It becomes a problem. Vasoconstriction will take place. Hypothalamus of the brain will now communicate with the blood vessels of the skin. And then vasoconstriction takes place as the sweat pores closes. And once it closes, it brings a shivering effect to the body because now the blood vessels are no longer flowing on the surface of the skin. It goes down the dermis, thereby bringing shivering effect. But during vasodilation, the blood vessels flows directly on top of the skin, causing the sweat pores to open. So what I'm trying to explain all of these are, imagine the young man who is filled up with cement and then the weather is hot, vasodilation is taking place, the sweat pores are open. What happens? This cement gets into the body via the pores of the skin, and then in the cool of the day, when the weather is a little bit cold, it closes. When the sweat pores closes, it traps these chemicals beneath the skin. That's absorption. That's how these things enter the body, through absorption. Some of us don't even know how to use. We can't differentiate between body spray and perfume. Body spray is something that you spray on your bare skin, and you have to shake before, and then give like a 3 centimeter, 5 centimeter distance between your hand and the body, and then you spray. But for perfume, you're supposed to spray it on the shirt before you wear it. But sometimes you just go ahead and spray even the perfume on the skin. then absorption takes place. These chemicals enters the body and it begins to cause one problem or the other. So I'm just trying to explain how these chemicals or substances enter the body. That's why they gain entrance into the body. If you're looking at my slide very well. Now, when it enters, let's say, so is there. So through ingestion, we have inhalation, we have absorption, that is through the skin. Then we also have through injection. Now, when it enters, what happens? It is being absorbed into the bloodstream and then distributed to the body tissues and organs. We know that it is the blood that carries nutrients, oxygen, hemoglobin around the entire body. So when these substances enter the body, it diffuses into the blood because definitely it will be regarded as a nutrient. So once it diffuses to the blood, it is now being distributed to the various organs of the body, kidney, the lungs, the other vital organs. And because it's a chemical, it's not a nutrient, it begins to have a serious issue. So when they're being distributed to the body's tissues and organs, they are stored. So once it's stored, some of them are stored, and then over time. So some of these things may not, the effect may not manifest immediately. It could be 5 years later, it could be 10 years later, it could be 15 years later. Why? Because they have been stored, and then gradually begins to now break down your tissues and organs. Others undergo metabolism. That means they are metabolized immediately. These ones give you an immediate effect that is noticeable over a short period of time. So once it gets metabolized, it begins to metabolize means to be broken down. It's broken down in the body, the tissues and the organs, and then it brings about what we call toxicity. It causes adverse effects of the body. Then if you're lucky enough, others can also be excreted when it gets into the body and you have a very strong antigens. These things can also get out of the skin via excretion, either through the skin or through normal excretion. So that is how these toxins enter the body, and then the fate and their effect when they enter the body. All right, I think that is well explained. So that's the fate and effect of toxicants. So proceed. Modes of toxic action. That's the next. Modes of toxic action. Number one, this includes the consideration at the fundamental level of organ, cell, and molecular function of all events leading to toxicity in vivo. That's uptake, distribution, metabolism, mode of action, and excretion. That's what I've explained to you. Is that particular what I just read? So it gets into the body. That is uptake. It's being distributed around the body via the bloodstream. It gets metabolized, broken down in the system, and then there's an action. It causes toxicity or whatever it is, and then some of them are being excreted out of the body. So mechanism of toxic action is used to describe an important molecular level of toxicity. So what molecular level does these poisons that enter into the body has on the body? So begin to measure the level of toxicity that has caused. All right. So once we get hold of the tissues or the organs, we begin to run several tests to see the level of toxicity that has caused as far as the body is concerned. So let's look at some important aspects of toxic actions. We have number one, biochemical and molecular toxicology. All of these explains the different aspects of toxicology, what they study or what they look at. So we have biochemical and molecular toxicology. This considers interaction at the biochemical and molecular levels. So it includes enzymes. For example, enzymes that metabolize xenobiotics, gene expressions, and signaling pathways in toxic action. So biochemical or molecular toxicology looks at the effect of toxins at the molecular or biochemical level. Then we have the behavioral toxicology. It deals with the effect of toxicants on animal and human behavior, which is the final integrated expression of nervous functions in the animal. That's behavioral toxicology. So the adverse effects of these toxins, how does it leave the animal or the human as far as their behavior is concerned. Some, you can give them a mental disorder, a serious mental problem. They begin to have, some even experience psychosis. You know, all these people that takes all these hard drugs. Those hard drugs, when they abuse the dose relationship, or they abuse the dose consumption, it can damage their brain. It can distort their brain, thereby leading to what we call psychosis or mental problem. They begin to behave anyhow. Some can even develop what we call Parkinson. All right, excess. There's a lot of, so the behavior, so they begin to shake. Some of them can start experiencing nervous breakdown. There's a lot. So if you see them, the animal begins to behave abnormally because of this adverse effect that this toxin has had over time in their body. So the branch of toxicology that studies the behavior of animals after they've been affected by these toxins or poisons is what behavioral toxicology is all about. Nutritional toxicology deals with the effect of diet on the expression of toxicity and with the mechanism of these effects. All right. Most times when we take nutrition or nutrients in the body, it's not only for growth and development, it's also to improve our antigens that helps to fight antibodies. So the branch of toxicology that deals with nutrients and diet and how they are expressed as in the level of toxicity is all called nutritional toxicology. Then we have carcinogenesis, the study of chemical, biochemical, and molecular events that lead to the large number of effects on cell growth. That's the study of cancerous substances and how they affect the cells of the body. All right, that's basically carcinogenic toxicology, or we call it carcinogenesis. Then we have the teratogenesis. The teratogenesis. Now, these are different. We're just trying to explain the various aspects of toxicology and the mode of actions in the body. So teratogenesis includes the chemical, biochemical, and molecular events that lead to deleterious effects on development. Now remember, carcinogenesis talks about the effect it has on cell growth, which leads to cancer. Okay, all those growth of, cancer is a cell. So how they manifest in the body begins to grow and begins to affect the body. But this one talks about the process of malformation, especially for the fetus and the embryo. Okay, how does these chemicals affect the formation of fetus or embryo, or the malformation? That's teratogenesis. Then mutagenesis, that's mutation. You can have what we call gene mutation, when genetic materials that are supposed to be transferred from a mother to offspring is mutated, is changed. All right, it begins to have effects. So when somebody is having a mutated gene and is being inherited by the offspring, they begin to have such effects. That's why you see cancer can run in a family for years, because one thing that this cancer does, these cells, they are poisons, is that it mutates the gene and then cause one deformity or the other. Organ toxicity talks about the effects of these toxins at the level of organ function. So you have what we call neurotoxicity. Neuro deals with the brain and the spine. So the part of, or the branch of toxicity that deals with the effect of poisons or toxins on the nervous system, the spinal nerves and the spinal cord, or the vertebral column, and also the brain. All of this talks about the neurotoxicology. So how do we measure toxicants and toxicity? Measurements of toxicants and toxicity. Now, these important aspect deals primarily with analytical chemistry, bioassay, and applied mathematics. So to measure the level of toxicity or toxicants, either within the environment or within the body, that's within the biological system, we need to apply analytical chemistry. We need to do a bioassay, and of course, we need to do some calculations. So they are designed to provide the methodology to answer certain critical, important questions. And what are these questions? Is a substance likely to be toxic? So when doctor says take 2 tablets of a particular drug, you now decide to take 5 or 10. You need to find out, you need to ask a question. If I take it, would it likely to be a toxin in my body? It's also likely to be toxic. Number 2, what is its chemical identity? We need to find out the chemical concentration. How much of it is present? So how much of this chemical concentration is present in that particular thing? Just like I said now, for the practical or the research you did, we had to now give the tilapia different doses of crude oil. And the more dose you give, the higher the chemical level and effect it has. So how much of it is present? How can we assay its toxic effect? Like I said, we're able to assay the toxic effect where we had to kill the fishes, extract or harvest the vital organs, the kidney, the liver, and then we did a lab test to identify the level of damage it has done. So how can you assay it? It's through test, lab test. There are other tests you can also carry out. What is the minimum level at which this toxic effect can be detected? At what level? Cancer is very, very difficult to detect at an early stage. In fact, must have grown, this cell must have grown to the extent of becoming cancer before you even identify it. So it's possible that you can have these cancerous cells in your body for a long time, but by the time you identify it, it's already late. So to help us measure toxicity and toxicants, these questions must be answered. These questions must be answered. Is the substance likely to be toxic? Look at that. Much of them in that particular thing that you want to consume. How can we actually find out the effect that it has, and what's minimum level, and what is the minimum level at which this toxic effect can be detected? So that is that for that. So other fields include analytical toxicology. All right, we also have toxicity testing. For analytical toxicology, the branch of analytical chemistry concerned with the identification and assay of toxic chemicals and their metabolites in biological and environmental materials. So analytical toxicology studies these chemicals, these materials that are found in the environment that has the ability to cause poison within the body. All right, so it studies where we need to know what is contained, the chemical constituents of these substances that can cause poison. Then we have the toxic testing, involves the use of living systems to estimate toxic effects at acute and chronic level. Just like I said, you can use fish, you can use albino rats, you can use other living, like some living organisms, just to estimate toxic effects. Why most times lab rats are usually used is because they share the same biochemical this thing with a human being. So we believe that any effect that a poison or toxin can have on those rats or albino rats, it can also have the same effect on humans. Then we have toxicologic pathology. We have structured activity, we have biomathematics and statistics, epidemiology. All these are used to measure the level of toxicants and toxicity within the body. For toxicologic pathway, we are talking about the branch of pathology that deals with the effect of toxic agents manifested as changes in subcellular, cellular tissues or organs and morphology. Okay, so this one talks about pathology is the study of diseases. All right, now what effect does it have, this toxic agent, what effect does it have in the subcellular, the cellular tissues and the rest of them? Okay, so we are done with measurement of toxicants and toxicity. Now the third one is the applied toxicology. Now they apply in the field or development of new methodology on new selective toxicants for early applications in the field setting. They include clinical toxicology. For clinical toxicology is the diagnosis and treatment of human poisoning. So clinical toxicology actually focuses on detecting it, that's diagnosing it, and then giving treatments when a human mistakenly takes poison. So they give you injections, or they subject you under ecology. Then, of course, we have the veterinary toxicology, the diagnosis and treatment of toxicology in animal is called veterinary toxicology. Other important concerns as far as veterinary toxicology is concerned also include the possible transmission of toxins to the human population in meat, fish, milk, and other foodstuffs. Because when these animals have these poisons, there's a possibility that these things will also be transmitted to humans because we consume them as food. Then forensic toxicology is actually used to detect poisons in clinicals and samples, like what killed somebody. If there's a a suspicion that the person died out of poison, we have to do a forensic toxicology to determine or detect this poison from samples of the person that's affected. Then we have the environmental toxicology, which is actually our focus. Environmental toxicology is concerned with the movement of toxicants and their metabolites and degradation products in the environment. How does these toxicants and poisons move around the environment, and how do they get into the food chains and then to begin to have effects on individuals or population? That's what environmental toxicology studies, and that will be our focus. The work environment and constitutes a significant part of industrial hygiene. Most toxins and poisons are actually gotten from our industry. So how does these poisons and toxins move around? If you work in an oil and gas company, you know that you'll be exposed to a lot of chemicals, both in liquid, solid, and gaseous, particularly gaseous and liquid. So the chemical use classes involves the toxicology aspect for the development of new chemicals for commercial use. It involves both synthetic chemicals, natural products, which should be subjected to the same toxic testing. Example, the insecticides, clinical drugs, drug of abuse. All right. So all of these are some of the classes of chemical use. So insecticide, know what is used. Insecticide is used to kill insects. So those insecticides is acting as poison to insects. All right. So when they take it at a very high dose, it causes fatality to them. Then clinical drugs, all are drugs that they usually give us, but the moment we consume them in high concentration, it becomes poisonous to the body. Then when we begin to now abuse them, that's when it starts having effects on the body. Then we have agricultural chemicals, and that includes compounds that is used to prepare insecticides, herbicides to kill herbs, fungicides to kill fungi, and then rodenticides used to kill rodents. So there's another class of chemical. All right, our clinical drug deals with pharmaceutical chemistry and of course pharmacology. Then we have drug abuse, like we said earlier. We have food additives. Then other classes include industrial chemicals. We have industrial chemicals. We have industrial chemicals. We have some industrial chemicals that can act as poisons or toxins in the environment, and when they get their way into the body, it becomes a problem. We have them like fertilizers, paints, all the chemicals that is used in industries for either manufacture, production, or synthetics. All of these things are also can act as toxins or poisons when they enter the body. The natural occurring substances, like there are certain mushrooms, fungi. Mushroom is a fungi, so there are certain fungi that are poisonous. There are certain plants that are poisonous. They are called the phytotoxins. Then fungi, poisonous mushrooms are called the mycotoxins. The study of fungi is called mycology. And then there are also some minerals occurring in the environment. They are all poisons when they enter the body. Then we have the combustion products. These ones are generated, these are toxins generated from fuels and other industrial chemicals that have a capacity to also cause poisoning to the body and even to the environment. Then we have the regulatory toxicology. That one talks about the legal aspects, formulation of laws and regulations and enforcement with the intention to minimize the effect of toxic chemicals on human health and environment. All right, so it's important that nations begin to formulate laws and regulations and policies on the use of these drugs. So with these laws and policies, we can actually help us contain, minimize, and control the use of these toxic chemicals on human health and, of course, the environment. That's like before any drug is being sent for consumption, they have to do certain tests. It must pass through the regulatory tests before they are being released. Then we have the risk assessment. Risk assessment must be done constantly and continuously to determine the level of risk, the potential risk associated to each chemical or substances that are being used in the environment or that are being given to the human. So if I take this particular dose of drug or this particular chemical, at what dose does it become lethal? At what point does it become fatal? So risk assessment tells us at different levels that they can cause lethality or fatality to humans. All right, relationship to other sciences. How does toxicology relate to the other sciences? Okay, they have a lot of relationship. For example, they are related. Toxicology is related to chemistry. We talked about the analytical toxicology. Is a branch. Analytical chemistry is a branch of chemistry that is used to find out the detailed composition of a chemical. So you see how toxicology is related to chemistry. It's related to biochemistry, the fate of these substances in the body. Is related to pathology, that is the diseases. Is related to physiology, how it affects the function of these tissues and organs in the body. Epidemiology also studies the diseases. Immunology, ecology talks about the environment. Biomathematics. All of these are the various sciences that that toxicology is really related to. Also, molecular biology has also contributed to advancements in toxicology. Others include forensic medicine and pharmacy, pharmacology and pharmacognosis, public health, industrial hygiene. See, all these different fields of sciences have paid attention or worked in relationship with toxicology just to get a lot of information. And all this information can now help to improve the health of both individuals and a community as a whole. Veterinary medicine for those who rear animals is also related to it. Agriculture, to be able to develop safe agricultural chemicals that even if they get into the agricultural products, it will not have a very serious effect on our body. All right. So that is that about what toxicants, toxicity, toxicology, the fates and the effects, how they move in the body, and different branches of toxicology. So we're going to stop here for today. In the next class, we'll start with the brief history of toxicology. We'll be able to look at the brief history of toxicology. How did it start? One of the researches I saw, toxicology came into effect in the 16th century, and there's a man called Paracelsus. He's referred to as the father of toxicology. He was actually the one that first started this study of toxicology. So we'll look briefly at the history of toxicology And then we'll now go straight to dose response relationship. Okay, the percentage of organisms and how they respond to the chemicals they're exposed to, at what dose or at what concentration are they exposed to. So we use a graph to actually explain this dose response relationship. So if organism is exposed to this particular dose within the environment, this is the effect it's going to have. When they're exposed to this particular dose, this is the response it's going to have. So look at those response relationship. We look at the sources of toxic compounds. What are the sources of toxic compounds? Then we look at the exposure classes. We'll look at the movement of these toxicants in the environment. Remember, we're dealing with environmental toxicology. How does these toxicants move in the body? We'll explain it in details. And then we'll look at environmental toxicology, what it does, how we can continuously improve the study of ecotoxicology as a biomarker in reducing toxins within the environment, which has adverse effects on human beings, and of course the things that are found in the environment. So all of these things, God willing, we'll be able to treat when we meet next time, which is tomorrow same time. So thank you so much for joining me today, and have a beautiful day. Bye.